Hello. Pardon the mess. I'm in the middle of a project and thought I would share something real quick about doing borders on a project that has irregular sides. So the first thing I did, I wanted to mask off the area in the center that I was going to use. I'm putting a quote on this. And so I figured approximately where these little bits here that curve, I figured, well, that would be a good place to start at. So I'd measured from center to center to get an idea of how large this piece in the center needed to be. And I determined 6.5 seemed to be a good size. So then I determined that how much space I wanted between the edge and the border and how much space there would be left for the border. I wasn't very particular about it. I kind of worked with the measurements so that they were easily workable, i.e. 1/2 and 1/4 inches, not like 1/8 inches, because that's just too much. So seeing how much space I had here was 3/4, I figured, well, 1/4 inch border would be nice. So that means I wanted a 1/2 inch to come in before the border would start. So that means that 1/2 inch needed to be masked off. So I cut some 1/2 inch strips from my contact paper, and I ended up cutting these in half because, well, I didn't need long strips of those. So hold on a second, let me pull this off real quick, and I'll show you what I did. So with the strips that I cut, I started with the straight areas because, well, that seemed to be the easiest thing to do. And I just plopped my pieces down, lining it up with the edge of my plaque because that's what I'm protecting. Then I did the same on this side as well. Provided I can get this on there. There we go. Well, close enough. Then the next thing was how to get a piece of contact paper that was rounded like this in the same width. So what I did is I took a piece of my contact paper and put it underneath my sign, and I traced out this arch, and then I measured down a 1/2 inch because it needs to be a 1/2 inch wide, and I measured it from the corners to a 1/2 inch and from the center, and then I took my piece and lined it up with those points and traced that again and then cut it out. So I ended up with this, and that will fit perfectly right there. Might take a little finagling to get it right into position, but there we go. Now the straight strips I let overlap a little bit into the circular area so that I could then use an X-Acto knife to cut along the circular piece so that I could remove and essentially kind of miter the pieces into each other, if that kind of makes sense. So that so one piece didn't stick out from the other one, so it makes a smooth transition. And then I used the leftover piece from what I had cut out here because of course it's going to be in that same arch, and used it. And then I lined up where the two pieces of the arch meet, run into the rest of the contact paper. I'm trying to think of how best to describe that. Sorry, all this stuff is painted because I just finished doing the border. But you'll see that where the curve intersects with the edge that I cut away from here, I lined those 2 points up with the edge of the center piece of contact paper. I'm hoping this is making sense. So I lined it up using the 2 corners kind of there of this arch, and that left me with the 1/2 inch in between so that I could stencil in my color. So now that I've explained all that, I'm going to do a bit of a reveal. Now, I'm not too concerned with this having bled through a little bit. I'm not that concerned about that, as this is going to look a little bit on the rustic side and worn a bit. And I'm hoping that I don't tear. I used napkins. I decoupaged napkins onto the plaque after I had painted it. And then decoupaged the flowers onto it as well. And because the flowers were a bit bright, I used a little Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White and mixed just a tiny bit of it with water and brushed over it to give it a more worn effect. But that is how my plaque turned out. And I'm not sure how I'm going to put the quote on here. I don't know if I'm just going to utilize this space here and have it kind of wrap around, or if I'm just going to cover the whole thing. That was another reason for wanting to dull this out a little bit. This is what the napkin originally looked like, so I needed to mute back that color quite a bit so that any quote that I put over top would be easily readable and discernible from the background. So I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out, and figuring out how to get my border to extend around in this curve and be reasonably consistent. I hope you found that useful, and hope you have a good night. Bye.